Um, in my previous video, I discussed about the parallelogram law, and part of it was about components of a force. Let us have a review of my previous topic. Uh, how to resolve a force into components. Now, sa parallelogram law, we have seen that two or more forces acting on a particle may be replaced by a single force which has the same effect on the particle. So two forces replaced by a single force which is called the resultant. Conversely, a single force F acting on a particle may be replaced by two or more forces which together have the same effect on the particle. So these forces are called the components of the original force F, and the process of substituting them for F is called resolving the force F into components. So, sample, sample sa left side, sa figure that is, the same force F but different components, different magnitudes of P and Q with different directions. But when you use parallelogram law, you will have the same magnitude of F and magnitude, same direction of F. So, same force, different components. So, to illustrate, again, I will show you this one. So, we have this single force, and we can have different components now that will have the same resultant, like this one. So, two forces, and after constructing a parallelogram, you will have this resultant, or this one. Uh, Different magnitudes of the two forces with different directions, but same resultant. This one or this one. So this video is about this one. Okay. Components directed along along the x-axis and along the y-axis. This will be our topic. We call this one rectangular components of a force. In many problems, it will be found desirable to resolve a force into two components which are perpendicular to each other. So in the figure shown, the force F has been resolved into a component Fx along the x-axis and a component Fy along the y-axis. The parallelogram drawn to obtain the two components is a rectangle. Rectangle size because the two forces are perpendicular. And Fx and Fy are called rectangular components. So again, if you have this force, and then you get the component along x and y axis, instead of a parallelogram, you will get a rectangle. So, construct a rectangle. The sides are the components. So this one, that would be your Fx and then Fy. And from trigonometry, given ang F and theta, you can solve for this component adjacent side. That's Fx is equal to F cosine theta and Fy F sine theta. So, mas simple siya. Kay perpendicular man along x and y. So let's try to understand rectangular components, okay, with the help of trigonometry. The common practice, okay, the common practice in getting the components is this one. Use the acute angle that the force F makes with the x-axis. Acute angle that the force F makes with the x-axis. But take into consideration the sense of the components. Meaning, if the component is directed to the left, positive. Negative. And if right, positive. For y, positive pag upward, negative pag downward. Okay. So for this one, our fx is negative, but our fy is positive. And, so we have negative f cosine of the angle. We have this one, negative 866.025, which means directly to the left and negative. For fy, positive lang. That's f sine theta. We have 500 newtons. Okay. You can do this one. This is the common practice. Okay. So, my suggestion is this. Always find the angle that the force makes with the x-axis to avoid confusion, because there are cases when the angle is referred from the y-axis. There are problems that you can find sa books na the direction of the force is referred from the y-axis. So what you will do is find the angle that the force F makes with the positive x-axis, so that Fx will always be F cosine theta, and that Fy will always be F sine theta. Okay, kung ang angle is referred from the vertical axis, ang Fy man ang cosine, because we all know sa trigo na pag cosine, adjacent siya. It's adjacent over hypotenuse. Now, and if the angle is referred from the y-axis, the adjacent side is Fy. So, ang Fy nimo ang cosine, F cosine theta. You might get confused. So, para dili ka ma-confuse, you always remember that Fx is always F cosine theta, then find the angle that the force F makes with the x-axis. Para consistent ka. Dili ka ma-confuse. Okay. Now, that's my suggestion. Pero there is another one. The not common style. Ang dili common is this one. Use the angle that the force F makes with the positive x-axis, measured counterclockwise. Okay, even if the angle is referred from the y-axis, okay lang, because ang reference niyo sa angle is from the positive x-axis. Like this one. If 30 is given, then the angle referred from the positive x-axis measured counterclockwise is 150. Yeah? 180 minus 30. Or, if ang given ng angle is referred from the y-axis, like 60, okay lang. That's 90 plus 60, 150. Okay, by doing this, the advantage is this. No need to worry about the sense of the components. Di na ka mag-worry whether positive ba ang Fx or negative as well as Fy. Naana diri sa angle. So, kung gamitin na nimo 1,000 cosine 150, it's negative. Diba? And Fy, 1,000 sine 150 degrees is 500 newtons. So, kung inani ang inyong style, di na ka ma-confuse or di na ka masipyat whether positive ba siya or negative ba. So, it will now depend on you kung asa ka. Okay? Asa ka comfortable magamit. Diri sa dili common na style or diri sa common. Pero, okay, applying the suggestion na if ever sa problem, the angle is referred from the y-axis, get the angle that the force F makes with the x-axis. Okay. So example, how to get the rectangular components if the slope is given instead of the angle. Okay? Slope like 3:4. Of course, by Pythagorean theorem, you can get the hypotenuse. Square root of 4 squared plus 3 squared, that's 5. Diba? Now, we can replace this one by ang 4 replaced by x, 3 replaced by y, and 5 replaced by d. So, if theta sa ni. Okay? As well as this one, theta sa. And let's go back sa expression. Fx is F cosine theta. And from here, cosine of theta is adjacent over hypotenuse. That's x over d. Yeah? And then Fy is F sine theta, and sine of theta is opposite over hypotenuse. So that's y over d. And if you want to solve for Fx and Fy, simple. X is 4, d is 5. Okay? So Fx equal to 800. And for Fy, y over d, that's 3 over 5. 600. So, yun na ang pagguha sa rectangular components if the slope is given. Okay. So, how do we add forces? So, ang pag-add sa forces is yan. You sum up x and y components. So, for FA, construct a rectangle, and then you have these components a sub x, a sub y. For B, construct a rectangle, and then you have bx and by. And then C also. Now, in vector form, the resultant is the sum of the forces. Vector sign. So it's vector A plus vector B plus vector C. Okay, resultant na. Now, with these components, instead na magnitude sa resultant ato makuha, components pa. So what we will do is, we are going to add all components sa x, and we call it, we denote it as Rx, Ex plus Bx plus lang, no? Pero sa actual, since Bx is directed to the left, minus na. Ax plus Bx plus Cx. Or simply, the sum of all horizontal components, x components. Same with Ry. Ry is Ay plus B sub y plus C sub y. And considering na Cy is downward, minus na. Or, ang sama ni is, this one. Summation na symbol. Summation of force along the y-axis. Y component. Mas simple siya. Okay. Now, the scalar components Rx and Ry of the resultant R of several forces acting on a particle are obtained by adding algebraically. Meaning to say, consider ang sign algebraically. So, consider ang sign. If upward, positive. If downward, negative. If directed to the right, positive. Pag left, negative. Obtained by adding algebraically the corresponding scalar components of the given forces. And in determining the resultant R, apply the parallelogram law. Okay, suppose you have this one at point O, the origin. Suppose, pag solve sa Rx, pag substitute sa components Ax, Bx, and Cx, positive ang result. So, i-plot na to. That's Rx. And suppose for Ry, positive sad. Ay plus By minus Cy, positive. So, next is, you draw a rectangle. Of course, apply a parallelogram law, but since perpendicular ang components, rectangle ang madraw ni mo. So, draw a rectangle. The diagonal is the resultant. And with the direction theta. So, given ang Rx and Ry, you solve for R using Pythagorean theorem. So, Rx is this one, square root of Rx squared plus Ry squared. And then to solve for theta, use tangent. Tangent of theta is opposite. This is Ry over adjacent, which is Rx. So, given ang components Rx and Ry, you can solve the magnitude. And given ang components Ry and Rx, you can solve for theta. The direction of the resultant is shared from the x-axis. So mas easier gamito ni siya i-compare nimo sa i-compare sa parallelogram law, especially if there are several forces, more than three forces. Okay, so to illustrate, let us solve this problem. Determine the magnitude of the resultant force and its direction measured counterclockwise from the positive x-axis. So we have two forces. Again, the F1 has a direction referred from the y-axis, and then F2, instead of the angle, slope given. So let's solve this in two ways. One, using parallelogram method. Second, using components. And then we'll compare kung same lang ba result. Okay. You solve for theta. Theta, you can use any trigonometric function, sine, cosine, tangent, and others. Solve for theta, arctan lang. Arctan of y over x is 67.38. And then, nung 30 dire, okay lang, 60 ang angle from the x-axis. Okay, let's plot. 26 theta, 67.38, and then we have 30, natay angle na 30 sa 30 degrees. So, construct a parallelogram, and then the diagonal, which passes also sa origin, this one, mana ang resultant. That's R. So, same na style sa parallelogram law sa previous na video. We analyze one triangle, kaya identical man eh. Suppose dire sa ibabaw, kaya na triangle. And then i-isolate na naman. Ay, so, get the angle, no? The interior angle. Now, since this is 30, this one is 60. Sorry. This is a triangle, eh? R and then 26, and this one is 30. Similar, ani, or same, ani, 30. Now, as discussed sa parallelogram law, what you will get is the included angle or the angle in between the given two sides para ma-solve ang R. So we are going to solve for this angle. Okay, this one. So before natin makuha, let us first solve for this one. Okay, makuha ang mga ito eh. This one, no? 60. That's 60. So ang 60 is dili sa R, ha? Kung dili sa x-axis na nakalagay 60. And makuha na to ang interior angle. That's 60 plus this one, 67.38. That's 127.38. And same style sa parallelogram law, to solve for this angle, pwede ra na 360 minus this one, 127.38 times 2, ba? 360 minus this one, times 2, kay same lang eh. And ang difference, i-divide siya og 2, kay equal man silang duha, pwede. Or, simply, 180 minus this one. So 180 minus 127.38, that's 52.62. Right, 52.62. Now with this, you can solve for R using cosine law. Okay, so this is your cosine law. In compute, after that, you get the square root, and you have the magnitude of R. Now, normally, ang procedure is after solving for R, nakay-value sa opposite parts naman na sila, given. Pwede na ka magamit o sine law. Okay, pwede na mo kami sine law. But since ang kwaon na to is this one, this angle beta, now, my the usual practice or my style is this, or my suggestion is this. If you're analyzing a triangle, and you are solving a particular angle. And if ever the angle is opposite the longest side, to be safe, use cosine law. Or like this one, r is 25. Therefore, the longest side is 30. And therefore, the biggest angle is this one, beta. To be safe, use cosine law to solve for beta. Because if you use sine theta, ang value ay hatag acute. Now, if you are solving for the biggest angle, moro ni siya ang naay possibility na mo-exceed og 90. Mahimo siyang obtuse. So, kung sine law ka, acute angle ang ihatag, you might be wrong. Okay? I have a sample problem on this sa other video about trigonometry. You can check it, and I think na ako example na to. Example na unsay danger if you solve for the biggest angle using sine law. Okay? So again, since biggest angle okay, it is opposite the longest side. I will use sine law. I will use cosine law para safe. So by cosine law, and always remember na sa cosine law, kung saan na angle ang i-consider, ang opposite side niya is placed on the left side of the equation. So for this one, since beta ang unknown, 30 is placed sa left side sa equation. So substitute R 25.078, you can solve for beta. Using your calculator, makasolve for beta. And beta is 71.91. Although acute siya, pero it's okay to be safe. Now, the direction of R is this. Kini na angle. And based sa mga angle, that is simply tama na siya. Okay. Beta, this is beta minus 67. Ang moment siya beta is from this one up to R. So, beta minus 67, that's the direction of R. Okay. Beta minus 67.38. Therefore, mo ng R. 71.91 minus 67.38 is 4.53. Now, solution 2 is using components. So, for F2, ano siya? Slope niya 5, 12, 13, and then F1, 30. Okay. Paano na ito again, direta, 60. Common na ito, common ang gamit. Get the angle referred from the x-axis. So, construct a rectangle, yan mo na yung components ni mo, fx, fy. Also, for f1, rectangle, fx na po, and then fy. So, makita rin na ang fx directed to the left and puro negative. So, for this component, it's simply f cosine theta, that's x over d, 5 over 13. And for this one, it's 30 cosine 60. It's negative 25. And then for fy, this is positive and then negative. This one, 26 y over d minus 30 sine 60. It's negative 1.981. So kung i-plot nimo, use parallelogram law, okay? At kay 25, negative man, so directly to the left, and then negative sa ng fy downward, 1.981. So, construct a rectangle, diagonal is the resultant. square root of 25 squared plus 1.91 squared, which is this one. And theta, direction niya, arctan of y over x. Arctan of ry over rx is 4.53. So, therefore, one yata resultant. 25.078 niya, angle niya, 4.53. Kung i-check na to, same lang. 25.078 niya, angle niya, 4.53. So, dapat equal sila o same value. Same value. Okay, another one. The two tugboats apply the forces P and Q to the barge, where P is equal to 76 kilonewtons and Q equals 52 kilonewtons. Determine the resultant of P and Q. Again, para natay comparison, solution 1 na to will be about parallelogram method. So, P is 76, Q is 52. Okay. Solve for theta and then alpha. So, theta is arctan of y over x, 12 over 24. That's 26.565. And then alpha, that's arctan of 32 over 60. 63.435. Okay. I-plot na to. We have 76 and then 52. And then construct a parallelogram. That's the resultant, R. Okay? Now, we need to solve for this angle para makuha natin niya. Okay? So, how do you solve for this angle phi? Simple lang. Ano daw? 180. 180 na yun. 180. Minus this one, alpha. Kana minus alpha. Ini alpha man eh. The result is this. Yeah? So, again, 180 minus this one, alpha, is this one. And then mag-add ta og theta. So, therefore, phi is equal to 180 minus alpha, this one, plus theta. Right. So, 180 minus alpha plus theta. Okay, 143. Now, to solve for this angle, kay kini man nga triangle, ano? Para mas convenient na siya. Kay pag solve to sa R, direction sa R, kini lang angle. So, we need to find this angle. So, ang sa mga pagkuha ni, ano yan? Kaya ang given to set kay 52 and 76 man. 76 ni 76 din niya. So, kuha ang ito ng angle. Beta. So, how to solve for beta? Ayan lang. Kung i-extend na to, sa ako na-explain sa parallelogram law. Phi siya na siya. Same rin na eh. Same line, tapos parallel sila doon. Pag phi na siya, phi siya. Therefore, kini na angle is simply 180 minus phi. So, beta is 180 minus phi, and that's equal to, kailangan, 36.87 degrees. So, we now have the value of beta we can solve for using cosine law. So, cosine law, we have this one. And then compute and get the square root of the magnitude. And then next is to solve for this angle. Para after solving for this, we will just subtract theta para natin direction sa R. So, okay. Let's use gamma. So, to solve for gamma, okay. Now, remember, cosine law, I'm using cosine law. direct na. Okay. Um, mm, Given a three sides, and I'm I'm using this one expression to solve for gamma. Direct na. Cosine of gamma 52 plus this one minus 76 squared over 2. Simplified na niya. Simplified. Bale, nag-skip na nako ang kin. Skip na. Supposed to be, ang step before is 76 squared is equal to 52 squared plus r squared minus 2 times 52 times r times cosine gamma. So, skip na diretso na cosine gamma. And gamma is equal to 100.925. So, the direction of r is this. And that is gamma, this one, gamma minus theta. So, 100.925 minus theta na 26.565. That's the direction of R. 74.36. Now, 100.925 minus 26.565. Now, for component method, okay, we have this one. 76, 52. And then, shortcut, 36 over, 32 over 16, i-reduce it to lowest term is simply 2 is to 1. Okay, 36 and 16. 32 and 16. So, lowest term, it's 2 over 1. So, makompute nimo ang hypotenuse ani, that's the square root of 5, square root of 1 squared plus 2 squared. For 52 sad, 12 is to 24. So, lowest term niya na 1 vertical, 2 horizontal. 1 vertical, 2 horizontal. Square root of 5, dapat. Square root of 2 squared plus 1 squared. So, components, muna ang iyong components, x, y, upward, for 52, component sa x, right, component sa y, downward, and solve ka. Positive ni, minus ni, negative. So, 52, x component niya, x over d, that's 2 over square root of 5, minus magnitude 76, x component, x over d, that's 1 over square root of 5. The answer is 12.522. And then, for ry, upward na minus negative 50. Equal to 44.721. So, i-plot ni mo, pwede sa di-plot, pwede sa dili na. To solve for r is simply square root of rx squared plus ry squared. You have this one. And then for theta, automatic, that's arctan of ry over rx. Arctan, this is ry and this rx. 74.36. Therefore, mao na that. Positive man. So, i-check na to sa parallelogram law. 46.44, 74.36. Same. 0.36. So, with this video, makita ninyo ang difference in using parallelogram law and using components. So, if you are given a choice, I think you would prefer the component method over sa parallelogram method. Unless kung specify sa probably na rectangular parallelogram law gamit. Okay. So, I hope that you have learned something from this presentation. Thank you for watching.